Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Carr, another screencast here. A little teaching, little shout out to all those cat herders out there. Love their cats. It's great. This warm up, you can skip this. We're going to do this tomorrow in class as our warm up. Today we're going to be solving quadratic equations by factoring. We've done them by graphing. Okay, if you get a quadratic equation and graph it, you want to find where it crosses the x-axis. These are your roots, your zeros, or your solutions, whatever you want to call them. We're going to be finding these 2 points, these 2 solutions, by solving using factoring. That's what we're going to be getting into today. And this is the way most people solve quadratic equations anyway, and it's a pretty nice way to do it. So, first thing I got to teach you is this. The zero product property, the ZPP. For any real numbers a and b, if b equals 0, what they mean is this: a times b equals 0. If you're multiplying these 2 factors, a and b, and it equals 0, well, one of 3 things has to be true. A has to equal 0, or b has to equal 0, or they both have to equal 0. We assume that they both equal, well, not both of them equal 0, but here's where we're getting it from. If you multiply a times b and it equals 0, one of them has to be 0. So you can set both of them equal to 0 according to the zero product property. And then one of those 2 has to be your solution. So an example would be something like this, where you take a factor of like x plus 5 times x minus 7. If it equals 0, then x plus 5 equals 0, or x minus 7 equals 0. Another example, let's say we had 3x times, I don't know, x plus 2 equals 0. How many factors do you have? 2. First one's 3x, second one is x plus 2. What we do is set our, if 3x times x plus 2 is equal to 0, then x has to equal 0, or x plus 2 has to equal 0. So we take this equation of multiplication and split it up into 2 little equations. That's what the zero product property is. And you can see this equation here would be easy to solve. Divide both sides by 3. This equation would be easy to solve right here. Subtract 2 from both sides and you get x equals -2. So that's the basic premise behind solving quadratic equations. You see the ZPP hat? It's one of my college hats, no big deal. Sweet lid. When we're solving these quadratic equations, we're going to do a few things. Number one, we're going to set each equation equal to 0. If we're going to use zero product property, you have to set, get all your terms on one side equal to 0. Then we're going to factor completely, because if you look at these problems, this is already factored. Even a times b, where is it? Oh, I lost it, whatever, is equal to 0. Factor completely, then set each factor equal to 0. Now this is your ZPP moment, zero product property moment. And then solve each little equation. It's pretty easy. You guys have done it before. This should be somewhat of a review. So I look at number 1 here. I have an x squared. This is a quadratic equation because of the x squared. So if I want to solve it, even if I wanted to solve it by graphing it, you still got to get everything equal to 0. So the first thing we do here is subtract 6x from both sides, and I get x squared minus 6x. Not negative 5x squared. I can't combine these 2 terms. One's an x squared term, one's just an x term. These cancel out, and they cancel out to 0. Forgot my x squared. Now, factor it. Well, I have 2 terms. One of them is x squared, one of them is 6x. I can use GCF. They both have an x in common, so I'm going to factor that x out. I'm left with x minus 6. So, set equation equal to 0, we did that. Factor completely, just got done doing that. Now, we're going to use the ZPP, and that is zero product property, where we set our factors equal to 0. So x equals 0, that's your first factor, and x minus 6 equals 0, that's your second factor. Well, I don't have to solve that equation, it's done. One of my solutions is 0. Here, I'm going to have to add 6 to both sides and get x equals 6. And we have two solutions, and we should have two solutions because it's an x squared term. It's a quadratic. If it was just an x term, it would have one solution. If I had an x cubed, I'd have three solutions. But we don't. It's just a quadratic, an x squared term, so we have these two solutions like this. You'll see solution set notation where they say x equals, and they use the braces, and they'll put 0 and 6 in there as your two solutions. This is called solution set notation. You don't have to write it like that, but you can. You'll see it in books and on tests a lot like that. So there's our first one. Let's do this one right here. Get rid of this. And first things first, I notice it's a quadratic. I have an x squared term, so I got to get everything on one side equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides, and I'm going to subtract 14 from both sides. These cancel out, and that's equal to 0. Over here, I'm going to have x squared minus 5x minus 14. And from here, I can see I have a general trinomial, an x squared term, an x term, and a constant. So I'm going to set up my little x over here. Your a is just 1, so it's just x squared, so you can go right into your two binomials, x and x. I need factors of negative 14 that I multiply together that add up to negative 5. And these two factors are going to be, I think, negative 7 and positive 2. So I get x minus 7 times x plus 2 equals 0. Here are my two factors. It's all factored. Now I can kick in the z, p, p, and say x minus 7 equals 0, or x plus 2 equals 0. Setting my two factors equal to 0. Adding 7 here, I get x equals 7. Subtracting 2 here from both sides, I get x equals negative 2. So there we go. We're done. Our solutions are 7 and negative 2. If you put it in solution set notation, it's got to be braces, not parentheses. If it's parentheses, they're just ordered pairs that you're graphing. So use the braces 7 comma negative 2 and finish it off with another brace. I don't care. You can write your answer like this, or you can put it in solution set notation. Okay. Solving. Hold on a second here. Okay. I'm going to let you guys try 3 and 4. I'll give you one of the answers. Now remember, it's x squared, so there's two answers. I'll say one of my answers for 3 is 8. You find the other one. I'll say one of my answers for number 4 here is 0. You find the other one. And we'll check up on those with you guys in class tomorrow. Let's do number 5 here. This is kind of a tough one. I'm going to add x to both sides because I want to get everything equal to 0. It's a quadratic equation. Subtract 1. So I'm going to get 6x squared plus x minus 1 equals 0. First step, get everything equal to 0. Factor completely. Well, this is a general trinomial, and it's 6x squared. Okay, so it's going to be a little more difficult. I'm going to take 6 and multiply it by the negative 1 and get negative 6. So I need factors of negative 6 that add up to, right here, what's in front of your x term? 1. Well, this is 3 and negative 2. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. 3 plus negative 2 is 1. Now, we're going to use grouping on this. We're going to break it up into 4 terms. So this is actually a 3x and a negative 2x. I can't go to my 2 sets of parentheses right away. First of all, I have my 6x squared. That stays the same. Now this 1x is 3x and negative 2x. So I'll say plus 3x minus 2x minus 1 equals 0. Grouping. Now the first two and the last two, I can take a 3x out of the first two, and I'm left with 2x plus 1. Here I have negative 2x and negative 1. I can't really factor anything out except a 1, and I'm gonna factor out a negative 1 because they're both negative, and I want them to both be positive. You can see they're both positive here. So plus a negative 1 times 2x plus 1. These two factors are the same, so that's my first factor, 2x plus 1 times 3x minus 1. And once again, this is all equal to 0. Now I kick in the ZPP. Yeah. You guys know what my favorite Usher song is? Yeah. Okay. 2x plus 1 equals 0. And 3x minus 1 equals 0. That's your zero product property right there, setting both factors equal to 0. And then just solving. You could probably do this in your head. You see we're going to have to subtract 1 and then divide by 2, so it's negative 1/2. If you didn't do it in your head, it's 2x equals negative 1, divide by 2, and you get x equals negative 1/2. One solution. What would this be? Add 1, divide by 3, you can see it's going to be 1/3. So adding 1, 3x equals 1, and then divide both sides by 3, x equals 1/3. So negative 1/2 and positive 1/3 are my two solutions. What we're going to do next is going to lead into talking about these factors and how you go from a factor down to a solution when you set it equals 0. You're basically solving. Because we're going to have to work backwards here in a little bit. Now, I'm going to have you guys do number 6. I'll give you one of the solutions. And one of the solutions is a 5. You find the other solution. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Okay. Here it says write a quadratic equation in standard form with the given roots. So now I'm saying negative 5 and negative 7 are my roots. Or you could say they're my zeros. Or you could say they're my solutions. Doesn't matter. Think about what the factor has to do with the solution. Okay. If I have a solution of negative 5, that means x equals negative 5. What would the factor be that it came from? Well, the factor is equal to 0 because when we're using ZPP, we're setting our factors equal to 0. So do the opposite. Add 5 to both sides. And I get x plus 5 equals 0. There's basically one of your factors. And now take the 7, x equals 7. If you subtract 7 from both sides, you get x minus 7 equals 0. There's another factor. So if I want to write this quadratic equation in standard form, well, I'm going to take my two factors here, x plus 5 and x minus 7, and just multiply them together. X times x is x squared. Minus 7x right here, plus 5x, finally minus 35 equals 0. And basically, in standard form, it says write a quadratic. It's x squared minus 2x minus 35. I'm not going to set it equals 0. I'm going to say f of x equals. I'll write it as a function in standard form. There's my x term, my x squared term, my x term, and my constant. So there you go. We went from 2 roots down to the quadratic function that it came from. And you have to be able to do that. So we'll work on that a little bit more tomorrow. And why don't you guys try this one? Now remember, the 4 is the factor it's going to be equivalent to is actually the opposite of 4, which is x minus 4. Negative 1/3. You guys see if you can figure that out, change that to a factor, multiply the two together, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. Other than that, peace out. Hope the girls win their volleyball game on Saturday, and I hope everyone went grouse hunting and got some grouse. That'd be great. Peace out.